For better or worse, weapons are ubiquitous with video games. We use them to enact our heroic fantasies, to showcase our power, and to dismantle those with opposing goals or ideas. In this edition of Leaderboard, OKB's new video game ranking show, we're breaking down the best weapons in gaming that aren't guns. If you want to hear the conversations behind this list, you should check out the Leaderboard Podcast, the show where we discuss, debate, and often argue about the games that should make this list. So, without further ado, here's OKB's top 10 video game weapons that aren't guns. At number 10, we have the Master Sword from The Legend of Zelda. Possibly the most quintessential sword in video games, Link's Master Sword has been an iconic weapon since its first appearance in the original Legend of Zelda. What makes this sword special is its history. Created to combat evil, the Master Sword has been Link's primary weapon in all of his major appearances. With each iteration, a bit more backstory and significance is added. This same sword, which was used to kill dragons in the original NES game, was also the one that helped us redeem Hyrule in Breath of the Wild. This is the same sword we used to slay bokoblins in Twilight Princess and defeat Ganon in Ocarina of Time. The Master Sword is one of the most seasoned weapons in all of video games. At number 9, we have Thunder Fury, Blessed Blade of the Windseeker from World of Warcraft. Thunder Fury, one of World of Warcraft's first legendary weapons, was a sword that instantly set apart the person who wielded it, as the path to obtaining it was incredibly convoluted. To even begin the questline to obtain the weapon, players had to hope for a rare boss drop, the Bindings of the Windseeker, and World of Warcraft's first 40-man raid called Molten Core. The quest item had such a low drop rate that many people spent years farming the raid. If a player was lucky enough to eventually obtain the Bindings, they were sent on one of the most expensive quest lines World of Warcraft has ever known, wherein they'd have to collect extremely rare materials and resources in order to have the weapon forged. The materials needed to craft Thunder Fury were so expensive that entire guilds would pool their resources together and then elect one of their leaders to wield Thunder Fury. Once the crafting materials were finally turned into the quest giver, a surprise raid boss would spawn, which players would then have to defeat. Finally, after putting in all of the money, resources, and work, the questing player would then be given Thunder Fury, Blessed Blade of the Windseeker, the legendary sword of lightning that granted its wielder the envy of the entire realm.
And this is probably the dopest weapon in the game. Doesn't really go along with my fire theme, but hey, it's a legendary weapon.
At number 8, we have the Saw Cleaver from Bloodborne. Every weapon in Bloodborne is either arcane, some really weird object, or a feat of mechanical engineering worthy of adulation. Bloodborne's incredible armory of weapons deserve a list of its own, honestly, but if I had to pick one weapon that deserves top honors, it's Old Faithful, the Saw Cleaver. The cleaver's particularly grimy look recalls nightmares of dirty hospitals, its aggressive aesthetic fulfilled and complemented by the game's expert ability to replicate the sound of a serrated blade tearing through flesh, and its ability to retain power across both forms is indicative of its majesty. 1 second you could be unleashing an intimate flurry attack, and the next you can extend the blade outward and bring it down on fools like they were on the chopping block. At number 7, we have Scorpion's Kunai Spear from Mortal Kombat. Anyone even remotely familiar with the Mortal Kombat franchise has one guttural battle cry permanently etched into their brains.
Get over here!
Those who have been on the receiving end of Scorpion's kunai are likely also familiar with the taste of blood and defeat. While the kunai weapon's design was fairly nondescript, a spear-like blade with an attached rope, its use was all but forgettable, impaling enemies only to then drag them across the battlefield to their doom. It's an experience that few of us will ever forget. At number 6, we have the Penetrator from Saints Row 3. Nothing says eat a dick quite as well as Saints Row's Penetrator weapon. What looks like a giant dildo at first sight might just end up being your best friend. The Penetrator lands a spot on this list because of its status as an icon and the hilarity of using it. It's a big dildo that you whack people with, and somehow the joke never gets old. It's one of the shining gems that established Saints Row 3's over-the-top comedy, and it's one of the funniest weapons that exists in video games. At number 5, we have the Beam Katana from No More Heroes. How do you give life to a glorified ripoff of a Star Wars lightsaber? Well, you put it in the crass hands of Travis Touchdown. Travis's beam katana is swift, ruthless, and ideal for taking down the leaderboard, no pun intended, of assassins that stand in the way of him and the title of #1 assassin. Whereas its inspiration is a symbol of good and righteousness, the beam katana is all about eviscerating people in the bloodiest manner. What makes this weapon special is how well it works with the Wii's Wiimote controller. 1 second you're tapping A to get a flurry of hits on your opponent, and the next you're swinging your arm to the right to deal a final blow. At number 4, we have the red shell from Mario Kart. Have you ever visualized what raw power looks like? You know, the ability to ruin your fellow man's day with the drop of a hat. It's probably incredibly difficult to do, yet somehow Nintendo pulled it off with the stunning simplicity of the design of Mario Kart's red shell. A projectile, it homes in on the target immediately in front of its user for a guaranteed stun, unless they have a means of blocking. If you get triple red shells, you're nigh unstoppable, and if you see someone with them, run. Even positioned on a list populated by many actually deadly weapons, the red shell managed to instill the most amount of fear in me. At number 3, we have the Blades of Chaos from God of War. The Blades of Chaos hit home on multiple levels. Narratively, their origin in God of War is dark and ruthless, spawning from a pledge Kratos made to Ares and serving as a reminder of the heartbreaking fate of Kratos' family. Aesthetically, these chained blades hit the perfect balance of badass and functional, as they are imbued with fire and serve as a dynamic mid-distance weapon that makes the user appear almost ballet-like in action. The blades provide fun gameplay as they take the mechanics of the popular hack and slash genre of the PlayStation 2 era and add even more fluidity and flow that makes for a satisfying feeling. At number 2, we have the Keyblade from Kingdom Hearts. The idea that a blade in the shape of a key is one of the most iconic, beloved, and versatile weapons in video games is flabbergasting. Nonetheless, the Keyblade is exactly that and more. The hallmark of a series originally pegged as Final Fantasy meets Disney, the legacy of the Keyblade has proved to be as long-winded and nonsensical as the plot of Kingdom Hearts. The ability for the weapon to change aesthetically to fit the abilities you decide to equip it with is super neat. Shout out to the Wombo Combo that is Oblivion and Oathkeeper. Sitting at number 1 on our list of the top 10 video game weapons that aren't guns, we have the Energy Sword from Halo. The iconic glowing sword, first revealed in Halo Combat Evolved but not usable by players until Halo 2, injects a set of mechanics that contrast the typical FPS experience. Instead of pelting enemy Spartans with a spray of bullets, the Energy Sword allows players to lunge across large distances to insta-kill enemies in one fell swoop. Not only is the Energy Sword incredibly powerful, it brings balance to the combat of the Halo franchise, as it serves as a popular countermeasure to the series' Overshield, which, as the name suggests, grants a player a massive amount of protective shielding. The legendary Covenant Blade is an icon within the video game industry and represents one of gaming's most important franchises. Halo's Energy Sword grants ultimate power to whoever wields it and strikes fear into the heart of any player standing on the wrong end of its blade. So there you have it, OKB's top 10 video game weapons that aren't guns. I want to know how you feel about this list. Do you agree? Do you think that we are missing a blatant, obvious choice? Let me know in the comments down below. Again, if you enjoyed watching this video, you can go listen to the Leaderboard Podcast every other Wednesday and listen to the discussions and debates that led to these particular rankings on this list. Thank you so much for watching this video. It means the world to us. And until next Friday when we release another video, have a good one.